We're going to just get started on increasing your average price point. This is a class we offered a few times. You know, there's no magic recipe, but these are some strategies that you can kind of adopt. And I'll be curious for your feedback always on this class. So here's our agenda. First, we're going to talk about like why we would have this goal and why this is even an interesting topic. We're going to kind of examine the characteristics of producers with high average price points. We're going to discuss how we can prepare ourselves for the opportunity to get some of those big deals. We're going to learn steps that can help us create that opportunity. And then we're going to kind of review the steps that you can take to help increase your average price point. So the first question, does anyone have any questions before we get going? Because I have a question for you, like, why would someone want to increase their average price point? Like, why is this a good topic? This is not a trick answer. I have a bunch of answers too, but.
Because if you, your process for caring for your buyer or your seller is generally the same, whether it's 100,000 or whether it's $1 million or 2 or 10.
Yes.
And there's still only 24 hours a day.
Yes.
Even though I regularly negotiate with God and try
to
push in 36.
I keep asking for that 8th day. It has not happened yet. Okay, so great. So yes, she's saying, you know, you get more bang for your buck in terms of your time because a deal is a deal. And that's exactly right.
Oh, look.
Anyone else? Yeah. Close less units, make the same amount of money, close the same number of units and make more money. Sometimes the deals are easier. You know, I was having this conversation the other day, you know, at lower price points, sometimes the parties are more squeezed, whereas at higher price points, you know, it's like, that's not always the case. That's not a surefire promise, but that can certainly happen. You know, there's, go ahead, Darlene.
I was going to say, definitely. It seems like the $1 million transactions are easier than the 300 and 200.
Sometimes, yeah. It was funny. I was talking to someone who was saying they were telling me how another agent had told them, like, I don't like dealing in the luxury price point because the people are more difficult. And I was like, interesting approach. That, you know, the houses are fun to tour and sell for sure. And, you know, to Bess's point, the return on your time is higher, right? So it's, I mean, it's an obvious and natural thing to want to do is to increase your average price point. So it's kind of like a silly question, but it's good to just review why are we talking about this? So then the question is, like, realistically and mathematically, what increases your average price point, right? You know, and these are the answers. You can get one really big deal and that'll drag the whole thing up. You can get rid of smaller deals, right? And that would increase your average price point. And like, you know, if you're dealing with investors that are buying, you know, $50,000 lots or $80,000 lots, I don't even know if those exist anymore anywhere near us, but you know, like those will drag your average price point down. Or you can get like a few deals that are slightly higher than your average. Or, you know, and what's been happening to a lot of us in the past couple of years is we're selling in a rising market, which is kind of naturally going to increase our average price point, which is good. So then the question is, how can we like beat the market and do better? And that's, we're going to talk about some strategies. And here's kind of the math on this. You know, in your first year, if your average is 400 and you did 7 deals, then, you know, if they want to increase it by 10%, like what does that look like, right? They can do basically the same deals, but just get one that's a little bit higher. The $650,000 deal is going to increase it. Here they got like a couple that were substantially higher and that increased it 20%. And here, you know, they did the same deals, but they just got that one much bigger one. So there's, like I said, there's different ways to skin the cat. It's just, and you can't necessarily be like, this is the approach I'm going to take. We're just talking about these for the purposes of wrapping our brains around the math of like actually increasing our average price point, right? It's not really something we have a ton of control of, but what we're going to talk about today is how to be intentional about it. And that's the question that it leads us to, like, is it realistic to think that I can actually do this? And I'm curious what you guys think. Bess is nodding yes. I mean, I think it's realistic. You have to be intentional. I also think we have to be realistic that it's like, I'm not going to increase my average price point in Q2, right? But it can be like, this is my project for this year and maybe next year, right? You have to kind of build towards it. And you'll see when we talk about like the things to do, it's not like an instantaneous thing that you can just figure out. So what are, if we think about agents that we know that are working at higher average price points, like what are, we brainstorm some like common characteristics of them?
Well, the people they spend their time with.
Yes, a peer group I think is really, really important. I mean, we didn't all, you know, graduate from whatever university or grow up on Beverly Drive, you know, like that's not necessarily all of our spheres, right? So that's very fair. That's a good one. I would say like most of the people that are operating at super high price points are generally like pretty good at what they do. Like they are experts, right? Not everyone, but I think for the most part, they're very knowledgeable. What else?
Socialize in maybe philanthropy and with groups of, you know, wealthy
Yes.
groups.
Yeah, that's right. Their peer group. And if that's not one that you're born into, right? That's when you can kind of like work your way into for sure. Anything else? Mark Cuban, I love this quote. Let's just go through these. Experts, they're experts, they're knowledgeable, they're very, I would say that most of them are pretty professional. I mean, we might have one or two outliers that aren't, but for the most part, to like be convincing people with higher price point homes that you can sell, you have to like be pretty professional. Like they're hardworking, they're market experts, they know their peers in the marketplace. That's an interesting one. That's not like who they're getting business from, but they're like networking with each other, right? Their other peers. You know, they present very professionally, and then they, you know, market effectively and consistently, for sure. And then of course, the last one was they probably start off, not probably, some of them start off as well connected, some of them like, you know, kind of work their way into it. So it is a big challenge. Not everyone just has that sphere that, you know, has super high price points, but let's be strategic. Mark Cuban has this awesome quote where he says, it's not about money or connections, it's the willingness to outwork and outlearn everyone in your business, which I think is true and inspirational, and coming from him is very fair because he built everything that he has, right? And now he has lots. It's just the willingness to work. And of course, that's never going to necessarily, how do I say this? If we weren't like born into the situation where we're just operating in a super high net worth space, we can work our way into it. There will obviously always be people there who are born into it, but we can also work our way into it. Mark Cuban's quote, I think, is really good. It's not about money or connections, it's the willingness to outwork and outlearn everyone in your business, which I think is good. Okay, so where should we start? If you're approaching your business like a business, which I think is key to like achieving like a higher level of your price point, then you will know your numbers and you'll kind of know your business, right? So if you want to increase your average price point, it's a good business strategy and a position, but you need a plan, right? And you need to know, what is my current average price point, right? And if you don't know that, it's really easy for you to pull your transactions in BFSAR Connect and figure out what it is. And be like, okay, and it may be higher than you thought, and it may be lower than you thought, but that's a good place to start, is like knowing what is your average price point for your listings, what is your average price point for your buyers, and then what is your list to buy ratio, right? So if you have really good higher average list price, but a very lower buy price because you're working with investors who are buying really low price homes, it's just good to know your business, I guess is my point. And then also you can kind of look and see, if you go through your transactions, if you have had any transactions that are like outliers and at your higher price point, it's like, okay, how did I get that business? And how can I replicate it, right? And then, you know, you should know your yearly marketing budget for yourself. And again, it does not have to be a huge number. I think you can work your way into a higher average price point. But these are just things that like super professional agents that are business minded, like know about themselves. And these are not hard numbers to come up with, right? Pretty straightforward. And if you ever need help with any of this stuff, like we can sit down and do it together. I'm always happy to help you. So any questions about this? Does it make sense, like why I'm starting here and where we're going?
Well, because if you don't know where you are, know where you want to go.
That's right. You got to know where you're starting. If our goal here is to increase our average price point, we got to know what is our average price point so that we can know what we're looking for to increase it. So perfect. Okay. You got to know your business and be strategic. So we're starting there. And of course, we're in a class with me, so we have to talk about like defining our goals, right? So you have to figure out what it is. So if you're like, okay, well, my average price point right now is $525. I would love to get it up to 600 or 700 or whatever. Like, know where you are, know what your goal is. Without a goal, you can't score, right? So let's figure out what is our plan to get there. Like, pick a realistic goal also. I don't mean, if your average price point right now is 550, I think it's dumb to be like, I want my average price point by the end of the year to be $1 million. Like, it might happen if you get some crazy $6 million connection, but realistically, I think a good goal to increase is like 10 to 30%, right? Is realistic depending on where you are. So take a minute and write it down. You guys know how firmly I believe in the power of like writing down your goal. So take a minute and write it down. If you don't know your average price point right now, that's fine. Figure it out later and write it down. So now we're going to talk about what you can do to create opportunities for yourself to get some larger deals. And there are 4 things you need to think about when you're consciously trying to increase your average price point. And what we're going to go through on this slide here is just a summary. We'll go into each of these in greater details, but I kind of want you guys to see like where we're headed. I think if you do all 4, you'll have like the most likelihood of success. But I'm going to like caveat this whole thing, which I already kind of did, is that there's no like magic playbook for increasing your average price point or for moving into a new market. Like, it's pretty straightforward. There's things you have to do. The number 1 component is like having a thoughtfully created strategy and then consistently executing it through hard work, right? I'm sorry, there's no like magic rabbit we're pulling out of our hat today to do this. It's hard work with a strategy that's well thought out, which is also kind of hard work to come up with. But hopefully today we can at least talk about the strategy for you to kind of lay out. So this is a good strategy and good steps on how to do it, but it's up to you to do the hard work. You know, my friend James Clear, without hard work, a great strategy remains a dream. Without a great strategy, hard work becomes a nightmare. Like, I love him, and I think that's so important. Okay, so the first one is kind of target and know the market that you want to operate in, right? Figure out what it is. And then you need to actually believe you can accomplish your goal and act accordingly, right? Like, okay, figure out what the market is, figure out what you're going to do, and then believe you can do it and act it out. Right? And then the next step is creating the opportunity for yourself by focusing on yourself and focusing on your sphere, like being intentional about creating that opportunity. And then when that opportunity does present itself to you, which it will, be prepared, right? And this is a lot of work, right? These are not easy steps, but it's being intentional and creating opportunities for yourself, and then being prepared when you get the opportunities. Again, sadly, the answer is hard work. You know, and there's my friend James Clear. So the first step that we talked about was knowing the market you want to operate in. And this is the first of the 4 like components. So you need to know the market. So think about a market where the average price point is somewhat higher than what your current price point is, right? And that, you know, if you're in Fort Worth, that might be River Hills, it might be Monticello, it might be Aledo. You know, if you're here, doesn't have to be Beverly Drive in Highland Park. It could be a certain section of Lakewood or East Dallas or a little bit north. Just figure out what's a market that you know somewhat that would make sense for you to focus on, that you can really focus on. And when you pick that market, you can define the area or the few areas. When you pick that market, you need to then do a little bit of research. You want to be competitive when you're on phone duty and you get a call about a house in Preston Hollow and you know the numbers so that you sound like an expert, right? You've seen the inventory, you know the numbers there. If you're looking at a specific neighborhood, one tip is that the turnover rate in that neighborhood should be greater than 7%. So you need to know like how many homes are in the neighborhood, how many homes have sold in the past 12 months, and then the turnover rate should be more than 7%. You don't want to pick a neighborhood where like the houses are at a very attractive price point, but like no one ever moves, right? And there's only 10 houses, like that's tough. that's going to be a tough one to focus on. So figure out what makes sense. The turnover rate you calculate by taking the property sold in the past 12 months by the number of homes, and then you can figure it out. If it's less than 7%, probably not the best neighborhood because it's a little bit slow moving. And also, if you see that a single agent has more than 25% market share, that might be a really tough market to break into. I will say, I think that can also be a really good market to break into, but you have to be, because you want to give people options, but you have to be really well connected to it. Like, for example, in Fort Worth, the Mira Vista market, there's one agent who lives there and she's like holds court, she's the queen of it, but she doesn't do a really good job. And I think that particular neighborhood is like super ripe for someone else who's smart and knowledgeable and likable and does a good job to come in and really take a lot of the market share there, because people just default to her because that's who everyone else uses. So that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule, but I think it's valuable that just if you see one person that is doing a good job, it might be really hard to like.
We'll just consider it eyes wide open.
Yeah.
And going back to your, I would say, going back to your top, how to increase your price point, know your competitor.
Yeah.
Know your agent competitor. Okay. So
yes,
add that to your things to know.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, Becky Fry's pain points or her uses.
Yeah. Who operates there? Who has the market share? What is their strength and weakness? For sure.
Maybe it was always number one.
Yeah. Well, that's how it is in this Mira Vista neighborhood. It's like she's not a very good agent, and people know that. So I'm like, someone please like focus on this area, but it has to be the right person, right? One of our agents needs to live there, and like, so that's my personal theory. But these are all things that you can figure out and know about that neighborhood, right? And then you should also know the schools, understand the taste and lifestyles of those who live in the area, like be knowledgeable about what's expected in that area. I was asking agents the other day, like, is it typical for garages to be insulated? Like, that's a weird question, but kind of, and immediately both of the agents that I texted like had a response, and I was like, these are people that like know what they're doing, right? And then know the restaurants, know what's happening around the holidays. Like, you should do a lot of homework about this neighborhood if you want to like focus on it. And then, tour and preview all the homes in the marketplace. Is it standard for everyone to have a Sub-Zero or built-in fridge? Like, do they all have separate master vanities? Like, do they all have huge walk-in closets, or is that like something that special houses have? Or you just need to know the market really well. And, the beauty of being at Briggs Freeman is that we have lots of properties like all over, and you can get to know a marketplace, through our own listings, but also, tour. Dallas is great about having like tours that you can all go on. So basically kind of know the market, right? And be an expert. People will be able to tell immediately if you know what you're talking about or if you don't know what you're talking about. And then also, once you feel like you have a good grasp, like offer to help agents who are already operating in that space. I think that's a good rule of thumb. Okay. So you're going to learn the market very well, the target market. So the next step is to act as if you are already the top seller in that market. And I'm just going to read this to you. This is from Jack Canfield. I love him. His book, The Success Principles, is one of my, I've probably read it or listened to it like at least 5 or 6 times in my life. Laura Span, when I first joined Briggs Freeman, suggested it to me, and that was only 8 years ago. So I read it. It's called The Success Principles. Jack Canfield is the guy that wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, which when I was a child was like one of my favorite books. Mm-hmm. But the Success Principles are awesome. It's like a bunch of little success principles. And one of these is acting as if, right? So one of the great strategies for success is to act as if you are already where you want to be. This means thinking like, talking like, dressing like, acting like, and feeling like the person who has already achieved your goal. Like, the mind is very powerful. We know this. Acting as if sends powerful commands to your subconscious mind to find creative ways to achieve your goals. It programs the reticular activating system, which we know about from Ninja, in your brain to start noticing anything that will help you succeed. And it sends strong message to the universe that this is the end goal, and it's something you really want. And I think this is why I'm so focused on us like knowing where we want to get to and having our goals written down, because we're training our brain to focus on that. I was telling my guaranteed goals group, one of my goals this year is to do more referrals, because it's very silly that I work at this like amazing company and literally know the best agent in every market. And I don't personally like capitalize on that of like helping the people that I know get connected to the best agents, because I don't like promote very often. And I'm making a conscious effort this year to do better. And I was feeling a little bit like beat down because we're 10 weeks into guaranteed goals and it's a 12-week program. And I was like, I don't really think it's working, but I know I'm planting the seed, so I have to stay positive. And I had just finished having that conversation on our like group call. And then that night a friend reached out and was like, hey, I need some help in Tyler. Like, do you know anybody? And it was a friend that I had just made in a church group like 6 months ago. So she was new, but she's seen my, and I was like, okay, it does work, right? We just have to like put our mind to it and focus on it and put our energy in that direction, and it works. So it's very powerful. I know it's woo-woo, but we know that there's like science behind it. Okay, so what does act as if look like? The first one is dress the part. You know, Barbara Corcoran says, if you want to be noticed, dress the part. That does not mean that you need to like drip in Gucci or go into debt on designer clothes, but just like be professional and meet every day. Even if you don't have appointments, like be mindful of how you're presenting yourself to other agents at the office, right? In real estate, you might get a call and you always need to be ready. Russ says, which I think is valuable, he says, you can't compensate for the work with the look, which I think is true. You gotta like have both. So I think that's a good one.
Dress the part. Have to think on a side note on dress the part, because people probably would have an issue with, do I always fall with that? I guess because of how I run my business, dress the part sometimes means like, I'm staging a house. I am not wearing a 3-piece suit to stage a house.
For sure.
So I guess to be taken seriously, I think you need to look like
you're doing
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost also locked the listing one time because they thought that I was too fancy for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess dress the part, I would just expand from my experience that it's like dress your part for that day's schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the point is like, don't come to work in phone duty in your like yoga outfit and expect to like be taken seriously, you know, and we don't do that, but it's just important to like emphasize, right? That was a good first place to start because it's low hanging fruit. But you're right. Yes, obviously in real estate, some days you're like doing things that aren't like the most glamorous. You wear your most glamorous outfit for sure. Okay, so then the next one is, you know, be conscious of the image and content you are presenting on social media. I think that's an important one. I used to work with someone and people would ask me like, does that person ever work? Because they were always posting like fun things and cocktails, and like she worked really hard and was really smart, but she wasn't projecting that necessarily. And it made people like wonder like, how dedicated is this person to their work if they're always out only doing fun stuff? So just be mindful of the image you're presenting. And do an online audit of your social media sites to make sure that everything's current, everything's professional. Your bio speaks up to you, kind of just that you're presenting professionally. I think a social media audit is always a good thing. I have 2 periods.
Which I totally emphasize on that because I actually got called out on my daughter.
Oh yeah.
she's like, you know, Mom, she's like, I just have to be upfront with you. I don't really follow your social media very often. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, because you're always helping.
Yeah.
She goes, but I want to like look at house pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And so she's like, your stuff is always interesting and helpful, but she goes, I just want to look at tubs and closets.
Yeah.
She goes, you need more like house stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but everybody does house stuff.
I think we forget that I do think we forget that we have access to like all sorts of like sexy house pictures. And I'm working, I'm slow, right? But I'm working on like a reel right now, like good pictures that I take like when I'm out looking at houses, which is like fun stuff people want to look at. And again, it's like aspirational, right? But because the people that I meet may not have like huge, crazy houses, but it would still be a good referral, but they need to like be reminded I'm in real estate, so I need to do better. But that's helpful feedback from your daughter. So even asking friends, like, what do you think, is an interesting one. Okay, take the opportunity when you're touring amazing houses to share photos of the homes, get permission, of course, from the listing agent, but, post glamour shots of high value assets, like promote open houses of other people's listings. If you can host, like associate yourself, you're going to go hold an open house in Preston Hollow for $2 million, like the people that see you will start to think of you, even if it's not your listing, right? So that said, if you are going to do an open house for an agent that's not your own, like you need to be 110% prepared, right? And like knock their socks off. The listing agent is trusting you and you want to do a really good job, and you want them next time they have one to be like, I must call Blake because he did such a good job, right? So I will tell you on the flip side of what Bess is saying, also, you don't also need to only post. We had a new agent and she was posting like only all this super high-end stuff, and her own peers, because she was younger, were like, well, do you want to help me with my like, you know, $400,000 condo? And she was like, yes, you should have to be strategic. You know, spell and punctuate properly, obviously. Sale is the noun, sell is the verb. That one kills me in particular. But anyway, that's a kid. I'm like a big grammar nerd. Poor Whitney, my stepdaughter, like whenever she texts me anything, I would like respond to her, but then also I'm like, she's like, she needs some spelling help. But anyway, okay, so one is create a positive affirmation. I know this sounds silly, but if you want to sell like higher price point homes, create an affirmation around it. I enjoy selling luxury homes over $800,000 and maintaining an average price point of $750,000, like whatever it is, like create it and do it. I know you guys, affirmations seem silly, but we know that they work. So I couldn't not mention that one. Incorporate some version of your affirmation into your elevator speech. So, you know, oh, what do you do? I'm a realtor with Bridge Freeman Sotheby's International Realty. I help people find and sell like luxury homes. I provide white glove service to clients at all price points, right? Like that's a little cheesy, but it's, you know, it's telling people exactly what you do, right? I'm helping people find and sell luxury dream homes. I provide white glove service to clients across all price points. Like you have to make it sound organic to you, but like we act as if, right? So that's what we're trying to do. And then, you know, remember the art of conversation, like be prepared to converse as if you are the leading agent in the area you're focusing on. But also, of course, remember, it's not all about us and what we know, like do your forward, of course. But, you know, before you go to an event, like know what's sold around, note of any notable happening. Just remember that be confident, be engaging, like be prepared to converse like the expert, right? So that's what acting as if looks like. Okay, so, you know, we were talking about how to act as if to create the right mindset around this. We've targeted a market that we're thinking we're going to have some success in, and we've really studied it. We know our average price point. We know where we want to get to. So now we need to like create the opportunity for ourselves and figure out how can we take some steps to create the opportunity. So, and there's two ways to think about creating the opportunity. One are things you're going to do yourself, and one are actions you're going to take with respect to third parties in your sphere. So we're going to think of this in two different ways. There's things you can do. There's things that have to do with other people. So first we'll talk about the things that you personally can do. There's 5 of them. You're going to act as if. You're going to offer to do open houses for agents with listings in this price point and in this market that you're targeting, right? You're going to offer to help agents who help within this price point. It doesn't have to be open houses. It's just like, how can I help you? And again, if you're in the office and you're presenting professionally and you do an amazing job, they're going to keep asking you to help, right? You're going to market yourself properly where people who see homes in this higher price point will see you, right? Wall Street Journal, Reside, 360 West, Dallas Business Journals. Put yourself in a position where it looks like you're operating in that space. And then you're going to create social media posts that support that you operate in the space. So these are all things that you can do, right? Proactive steps that you can do. Any questions there? Any other ideas? This thing on? Okay. And then, you know, the last one. Go ahead, Darlene.
I was just going to say, I like all of this. I know it, I forget it, and it's so nice to hear it all over again. Thank you so much.
No, you're sweet. It's not, you know, again, there's no like magic wand or rabbit to pull out of the hat, but it's just a good, like consistent reminder, right? And then, you know, share luxury content and listings in your newsletter and your social media, you know, while also being mindful of not like alienating people and making them think you only operate at like the $2 million price point. Okay. So then the next one is creating the opportunity like with your sphere, right? Jim Rohn says you are the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with, right? So you're really in good company because you've chosen Briggs Freeman, which is like a luxury brand with exceptional agents and, you know, management, and everyone wants you to be the best version of yourself. So you need to think about embracing valuable network opportunities, and you need to think about where you're spending your networking time and whether it's really fruitful. And maybe you're like, yes, this is great for me. And maybe you're like, man, I go to that chamber meeting. I always pick on the chamber, which is not fair, but I go to that chamber meeting every month and it's like, you know, I really haven't gotten anything about it. Just take a moment and be strategic, right? People who network consciously have success, period. That's the bottom line. So these are ideas of where you could expand or, you know, swap something out in your network. And then, you know, volunteering, like I think Darlene mentioned earlier, like philanthropic opportunities, networking groups, sports and social clubs, charitable boards, community involvement, you know, Sotheby's affiliates, absolutely. You know, builders, like there's all sorts of ways to kind of network. If you're not consciously leaning into the Sotheby's network and establishing referral partners, like you are missing out on a huge opportunity for sure. In 2020, sorry, this data is old. The average price point for a Sotheby's Sotheby's referral when the agent was specifically requested, meaning someone from Russ Lyons was like, I am calling Beth to do this, and specifically chose her. It wasn't just like a generic referral. The average price point was 1.3 million, and that was in 2020. So think about what it would be now. I need to update that information, but if you can intentionally network with Sotheby's affiliates, it's a great way to do it. It doesn't mean you have to go to every networking event, but there's a lot going on. Just be mindful about that. And then, you know, the last section is builders. So a good way to increase your average price point is to find a builder who sells above it and get that business. That's easy to say and harder to do, just to find a builder, but it's an idea. So the general point here is to be strategic and intentional with the way you're spending your time, for sure. And then also when you are networking with people, it's not about like, how can they help you, right? It's like, how can you help them, right? The go-giver approach. Just connect with people who are like-minded and try to help them, and it'll end up helping you for sure. And to that point, be a go-giver with your own service providers, right? Like vendors, dentists, doctors, financial planners, insurance brokers, concierges, like at an HOA, concierges, attorneys, CPAs, teachers, cardiologists. Like there's so many different people that you need services from, that you can help them get more business and make sure that they know what you do, and that hopefully that they're helping you. This is, you know, these are people you could also be doing real estate reviews for, and that likely have homes like in a higher price point range, right? So think about that as you choose your own service providers. Does this make sense? Does anyone already do this? I'm looking at this list right now and I'm like, oh, dentists. And I'm trying to do real estate reviews as part of my like increasing my referral network. And I'm like, my dentist lives in my own neighborhood and I should absolutely send him one of those so that he thinks of me, right? Like I'm like making a note for myself to do this. I think it's important in I'm literally writing down.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, would you ask the dentist for his address or just look it up and then just send it? I mean, I think asking is best, or do you just go online and search them to where they're living and then send it? What do you?
It depends. Like, I mean, if it depends, like my dentist is super friendly and he lives in my neighborhood. So it would not be out of line for me to be like, hey, Dr. DeBull, like I'm sending, I'll put it together and I'll put the cover letter and be like, hey, like, I just wanted to send this to you. We were looking at the comps on our own house. And so I thought it would be helpful for you to see. Like, I really don't think he's moving, but I want him to be like, oh, Zareen works for Sotheby's, and just like, you know, like start planting the seeds. This may not turn into a deal until like 4 years from now. But next time I'm in the dentist and then he's asking me about it, I'll be like, oh, I got your thing. Like, thank you. And then like his dental hygienist hears me talking about it. I know him. So that one's not like that tricky. But I don't think it's weird to like look people up and just send them to them. And you know, we always talk about this because people are like shy to send out real estate reviews, or they like feel weird about it. I think it's really easy to say like, hey, I was pulling this for a client in your neighborhood and I know you live here, so I'm sending it to you as well. And you can say that in the cover letter, and then you're literally just being helpful, right? Does that feel weird, or does that feel like something you maybe would do?
No, it's something I would do. It's easy, of course, to do it with people I know, but I hadn't really thought about these people that I see once a year, twice a year.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great idea. Yes.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at this too, and I'm like, oh, we're working on our will right now. And I'm like, there's no reason that I shouldn't send this to her, especially because attorneys that operate in like that space, like oftentimes have people that are trying to get rid of real estate. I'm like, why am I missing all of these opportunities? So if no one else gets anything from this class today, thank you guys for listening to me for an hour, because this will help me point me in the right direction of some people I could do this for, right? So, you know, this was helpful for me. So thanks for listening. But yeah, I think it makes sense, right? And obviously, like, you don't have to like look up all your kids' teachers and do this for them. But if there's someone that you really connect with, I think it's really easy to be like, hey, I wanted to send this to you. Like, and some people are weird about privacy. You always have to kind of like know who your audience is, but I don't think it's that strange. Especially if you're just trying to help and it's our job, right? Okay, so one of the last steps is, you know, being prepared for the opportunity, right? Like, we learned our market, we've acted as if we're being thoughtful about how we're doing this and creating the opportunities for ourselves. So now, like, when we do create the opportunity for ourselves, we need to be prepared, right? We've covered a lot, but we need to, if we do all of these things, eventually the opportunity is going to present itself. And in that case, then we need to be prepared so that we can actually close the business and get it. So you need to just be ready. So again, how do we do this? You got to be the expert, right? You need to have your buyer process and your listing process clear, right? And your collateral ready to go. Act as if you get $1 million listing presentations all the time. Treat every current listing presentation as if it's a big one, so that, because they're all practices for it, right?
Amen.
Amen. So be prepared, be the expert, have your processes cleared up, have your professional, your collateral ready to go, figure out what it is, right? So that it's not like a surprise when it gets to you and you're doing it for the first time and you're really nervous, right? Like, let every listing presentation that you go on, or buyer that you work with, be like your dress rehearsal, right? And you're taking amazing care of them too. So that's my first tip, be the expert. And then the next one is like, know the market, right? Study the comps, tour, know what's going on, know the key players, like, know who's working in that space, so that if you need a hip pocket, you know who to call, like, present yourself professionally to them. Like, information is power. The more you know, like, the better you're going to do. So be knowledgeable. And then, be professional and be ready to present as a professional always, right? Like, figure out what you would wear, know what your process is. But I will say, if what you're doing works and you catch a big fish and you don't feel prepared, do not hesitate to ask for help. Ask your manager to come with you. Ask for us to come with you. If you want to partner with someone who does operate in that space at that price point, because you just want to be sure the first time, like, that's totally fine. There's so many people that want to help you here and collaborate with you. It's just important that when the opportunity does present itself, that you are, professional and credible. I'm not saying you have to do any of those things. You may be like, I got this, and go do it. That's awesome. But, be mindful of that. And then, the details matter, so pay attention to them. So the question is, how can we be confident in what we're doing when we get the opportunity? Has anyone ever felt like, you see these two girls, right? And like, there's one that's ready to go, and there's one that's like, oh gosh, I got to pull this together. And one's at home and one's like at the office working. So I think it's just a good message. But how do you guys feel about this so far? Like, how do you know you're going to get these opportunities?
Well, if I may share.
Yes, please.
Lauren von Rosenberg and I just looked at a house yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And it is and it kind of ties all this together.
Okay, love it.
So been in the business for over 10 years and been following these things, like Darlene said, yes, consistently inconsistent.
We're
All
humans.
these things,
Yeah.
but still moving forward. Last year came very close to winning a listing for several multi-million-dollar houses. Lost it every time because I missed one of these key components. When I started getting quizzed, the seller's reaction was, "We love you, we love your attitude, it's refreshing," talking about getting into a market where other people were dominating. People actually said, "You were refreshing, you were different, we appreciated it, but you did not answer this, or you did not have that." So every time I lost one, I was like, okay, dadgummit, I am not gonna stub my toe again there. Okay. So I'm in Panama on a trade mission. Metrotex does international trade missions. I was in Panama on a trade mission. I get this call from someone saying they had talked to other agents, did not like their answers, found my, talking about leveraging the brand, found my bio on Sotheby's.
Love it.
And it mentioned that I have been in some sort of remodeling, refreshing house my entire life, which is true. Which
Good.
It's in my bio.
Good.
Would I please come over? Okay. Darlene and Blake are like, what the hell? Let's get to the point.
No, it's good.
Met them in person solo. We hit it off. They asked me a couple of questions outside of what I expected them to ask. And my first thought was, you know, those are great questions. My partner could not make it today. I'll ask her too, because you get both of us in this deal.
I love it.
Okay. Did not have a partner yet at that time.
Hey, thinking fast.
So
That's awesome.
Speed dialing Lauren on Rosenberg when I get out, kind of thing, and just say, what do you think?
Yeah.
Do you want to help me with this?
Yeah.
She's like, yes. Anyway, so that call, by the way, was in January, talking about process and consistency.
Yeah.
We just went live yesterday.
Yeah.
It was a process. We had to do some refreshing, but yes, to affirm you, all these things came together through this listing.
Awesome.
We went live at 5:30, had our first showing at 5:45.
Awesome.
We had our last showing last night at 8 o'clock.
Congrats.
So we've had a verbal offer.
Fantastic.
By the way, from just on a side note.
Well, we'll take it.
Fancy.
Love it. Briggs.
But all that to say, I encourage everybody out there, especially if you're less than 10 years. I've been 10 years working at this.
Yeah.
And it definitely is consistency and be fearless in bringing in a partner. Because be strategic with your partner. And I would say go back to professionalism and coming to the office and showing up, getting to know all these agents, because every agent has a different personality.
Yeah.
And you know, and Lauren is just, we're very complimentary, I think, of our different skill sets.
For sure.
So it's really working out well.
I love it.
And actually, on a side note, we've already had a referral to each other through all this whole process, just from talking and talking about the networking.
Yeah. Good.
There you go. So
I love it.
Hopefully that adds
Awesome.
to everybody's takeaway on this class.
Hopefully you're saying I'm not just like making stuff up. That's good. It feels validating. That's awesome. Thank you. I love that story. That's good. I can't hope the deal comes together with Poget. That would be super fun to celebrate. Yeah. Okay. So like we said, details matter, you know, presenting professionally, all of the things. If you take the actions we are talking about, you'll get these opportunities, right? But you don't want to make these opportunities for yourself and then drop the ball, because that's very painful to like get so close and then not win it, which is going to happen, but that's okay. So the last piece, of course, is just making sure you're ready for the opportunity when it presents itself, and that you're not like scurrying around on the details. So what does that mean? Like, you know, how can you be prepared? Practice, right? Shadow an experienced agent, like at an open house, on a listing presentation. Find a partner to practice scripts with. Spend time at the office and around other agents and watch and listen how other producers handle their business. Have your process refined and know how you would handle it, and then practice it, right? Like I said, like even if it's just a $450,000 listing, like if you give yourself a dress rehearsal for when you get the $1.5 million listing opportunity, like, then it's not like something new that you've never done before, right? Like, get your process in shape now and like do your homework, right? Like, know the market. This goes back to, sadly, the most important thing is like hard work, right? That's the number one component. Hard work, being prepared. There's lots of moving parts and to-do items that we've kind of talked about. But you know, if your goal is to increase your average price point, like, that may happen because we're in a rising market. But if you want to be proactive and not just like cross your fingers and hope that that happens, these are the steps that you need to take, right? It's not easy, but it's doable, and it's going to make you better overall anyway. So here's kind of a summary of what we have. Does anyone have any like takeaways already that they want to share? Anything that you're like, oh, I need to do that? I mean, I know mine is like, look at who my vendors are and like do my real estate reviews for them. Like, that's a low hanging obvious one for me. Anyone else? Okay, I'm not going to force you to talk. So know your numbers, right? Know your goal, important. Target a market and know that where it is that you want to operate it, and then really, really learn it, right? Believe you can accomplish this, right? And just make it a goal. Like, this is where I'm headed and this is what I'm going to do to get there, and believe it. Create that opportunity for yourself by focusing on yourself, the things you can be doing, but also focusing on your sphere and who's around you and who are you spending your time with and networking with. And then, you know, be prepared for the opportunity so that when it does present itself, you're like, I got this, right? Or you're bringing in a partner to help you get this. Totally fine. So any questions, comments, sarcastic remarks? What I really hope that you like walk away with is the like belief that if you really want to increase your average price point, like, you can do it, right? It is doable. It's very difficult. We talked about this is a lot of work and a lot of different things, but it is doable. And I hope you don't feel like it's too difficult, because nothing that we're talking about doing is hard. It's just discipline and hard work at the end of the day. And it's going to take like consistent, thoughtful execution of a real strategy with like a few different moving parts. And I do want to be clear, like, as you're doing all of this, that doesn't mean you're abandoning your existing business to focus only on like this neighborhood or this big fish. I think you can use this goal of increasing your average price point to improve how you're executing your existing business and just be more professional in general. Not that you guys aren't all professional, but obviously keep your bread and butter going and then add these additional steps, and it will make all of your business better, I think, for sure. So, questions? That's all I got. We're a little bit early, which I'm sure nobody minds.
Thank you. So nice.